Welcome to the Heal Thrive Dream podcast, where trauma survivors become healthy thrivers. Each month, we'll feature a theme in the trauma recovery and empowerment field. To promote your recovery, healing, and learning how to build dreams, here's your host, Karen Robinson, transformational coach and therapist.
Welcome to the Heal Thrive Dream podcast. Our guest today is Beth Wilson. Beth is an intuitive guide. She's an energy healer. She's an international best-selling author and a biomagnetism practitioner. If I said that a little wrong, she'll fix it in just a second. Her work is spirit-driven and deeply personal. Beth offers support, guidance, and offers healing for those navigating transformational shifts, emotional blocks, or a desire to be more fully aligned with soul expression and integrated wellness. She began her career in the US Congress and eventually moved into publishing and media. So, Beth, thank you for being a guest on my show today.
Thanks so much, Karen. Really good to be here.
And so, for the audience to know, we had some tech glitches when we first came on Zoom. I look like an alien ghost. So now I'm recording from my phone, which is not ideal, but we're improvising and rolling with it. Beth has an incredible bio, and I just read a little snippet for you today, and she's gonna talk about her books and some of the work she does. But before we do that, I just wanted to say thank you, Beth, for being one of our expert speakers on the May Summit, Finding Your Voice After Trauma. And I wanted to ask you first, what made you decide that? What about that topic resonated with you?
I think it's amazing when you're in trauma situations, and you know this, Karen, as well, but you never can be reminded enough of how easy it is to abandon yourself. When you're placed in survival mode or being constantly manipulated, seduced, or sadistically treated, it's easy to abandon yourself and lose your voice and lose your connection with that deep inner voice inside of yourself, whether you want to call that God, spirit, higher self, doesn't matter to me. But that loss of that connection is very common to trauma survivors. And so regaining that voice and learning how to articulate their experience, but also articulate their healing and recovery is deeply important. So that really drew me to the topic.
Awesome. We are pleased as punch to have you. You're a first time speaker with us, but I know you've had other speaking opportunities. Is there an experience from your past that you feel comfortable sharing a little bit today? Because as my audience is complex trauma survivors.
Yes, my latest book, Escaping Crazytown, is exactly that. It's about dealing with a brilliant, visionary mother who became a cult leader over time, but she really was a very amazing person, way ahead of her time. So I can definitely give her that. But she targeted me, as narcissists, malignant narcissists do. And growing up with her with a lot of empty promises. One of the things I talk about in my book, when I was young, I was a young teenager. She suddenly decided first of all, when I was 11, she announced to me that I was on my own. She would no longer be parenting because she wasn't interested after she had gotten me isolated away from my father, who was my rock. And that was all very conscious. And then to drive the point home, she pointed to this work of art that she had on her wall. And it was a picture of a woman being raped from the back by her husband or a man, but it was a skeleton. And on the front of the woman was a toddler clawing at her. And she said, "This is my experience of parenthood. And this is what parenting is like."
Wow.
Yeah. And first of
Yeah.
all, to have that up right in our living room where you sit every day, and then to point to it, it was devastating. Especially because, Karen, I'm so different just in my soul. I couldn't wait to have children. I've mothered other people's children myself, and I love it. It's one of the happiest times of my life. And to hear her say something like that not only negated who I was, but basically told me she hated me, she hated child rearing, she hated being a mom and her connection with me, and she felt that it was abhorrent. So that was very devastating. Yeah, and very
Um, I'm so sorry that for that experience, but I know that you've made other meaning out of it. Part of that experience shaped you and the work that you do today. You found gifts in it somehow. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
I was born with a lot of intuitive talents. I didn't realize, I'm just going to be very open about it, Karen. I didn't realize people couldn't talk to dead people. I
Mhm.
didn't realize that people did not download messages on how to heal. So when I asked, I often received, literally. And I didn't understand until I was about 14. That was not normal for most people. And so I think those gifts, as I focused on those and learned how they could serve myself and how they could serve others, that gave me a different focus so that my mother and all of the events surrounding her, which were interesting. I'll give her credit on that. My mother used to suddenly wake up in the morning. She was a food addict, among other things. And she'd say, I'm going to fly us to New York so we can get a Schweppes hot fudge sundae. So off we would go to New York and feed our faces, right? And sometimes it was like I would wake up and say to myself, this is crazy. It's sometimes it's fun crazy, sometimes it's cruel crazy. It's kind of crazy. And so, these events were happening in my life. And yet the centering point for me was to be out in nature, to often be with animals, to be with people who resonated with this, to be in service of others. I had teachers, so many wonderful teachers who recognized what I was about. They recognized my intelligence and also that I seemed to have very perceptive gifts. And so there were so many others. I felt like Spirit put so many angels in my path that thank goodness she was not the only game in town. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know from personal and professional experience, when we do have parents, though, that it's abuse, plain and simple. When we have abuse in childhood, it can have ramifications lifelong. What would you say were your biggest struggles because of the trauma? I know what your gifts are, but your struggles.
No, my struggles were I got into relationships I had no business being in because I had such a hungry heart. I really desperately wanted a cohesive, loving family, and I wanted that experience. I experienced that with some of my good boyfriends' families, and I wanted that. And unfortunately, that got me into abusive relationships where, I didn't understand the level that people could lie, manipulate, and be abusive. And even I got involved with some sex addicts, and that's a horrible experience. Sex addicts get you here and here, as they say. And so I would say that was one of the biggest impacts from my trauma, where I kept going to the hardware store for milk, basically, and then would get into these awful situations. And the other issue was food. I didn't realize that there was an episode I read about in my book, Escaping Crazytown, where I cooked a whole batch of blueberry muffins, and then I ate the whole batch. And I told my mother, the words just came out of my mouth. I wasn't even thinking about it. I said, I think I just tried to commit suicide by eating a whole tin of muffins. And her response was, just clean up after yourself if you're going to do that, which again was so dismissive and cruel. However, I had that epiphany moment of going, there's something here to that. And so I have dealt with food issues in my life. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to both of those impact symptoms, if you may. The relationship, being unlucky in love, two
Mhm.
failed marriages before I finally figured it out personally and professionally. And then two, food. Definitely can relate.
Very
When did
common.
Yeah. When did you discover, for lack of a better word, that you could work on your healing also through your writing?
Oh, I think actually that happened when I was quite young. I came from a line of writers and authors. My grandmother was a beautiful poet, and I do include one of her poems in my latest book because it was just so simple and so beautiful. And so when I was young, I do remember I was in second grade and I had this wonderful teacher named Peggy Reichman. And she encouraged me to keep writing my poetry because that was in the 60s. And when poetry was being used for social activism and things of that nature. And so she really encouraged me. And I ended up winning all these contests, poetry
Oh,
contests. And to me, it just seemed like a way to express. Yes, it was flattering and lovely to win contests, but what that did was zero me in on the fact that this was a powerful tool to express myself, a powerful tool to say what sometimes couldn't be said. And I just continued that on throughout my life. Yeah.
beautiful. Well, tell us about the first book you read. What's the title and give us a teaser about it.
Oh, sure. My first book was Meditations for New Mothers. And I love this book because not only has it sold over 1 million copies worldwide, and it's
Wow.
translated in 12 different languages. So it really struck a beautiful note with mothers. When it goes back to the separation between me and who my mother was, that I loved mothering. And my son, I think, was only a few months old, and he was not a napper. He would drive me nuts. All my friends, they would say, "Oh, yeah, I put my child down. He slept for 2 or 3 hours." And I'm thinking, what child do you have? Or where did you order him from? And my son was more of a cat napper. And so one day he literally, I almost, thank goodness for baby monitors because I thought maybe he died. He was so quiet for 2 or 3 hours. So I went and I laid in the sun and I literally had one of those downloads that I get that said, write this book. It's going to be a page a day meditation book and it's going to be on motherhood. And that book was amazing, Karen, because not only did the first royalty check get me out of my marriage, but it allowed me to get out of my marriage that was becoming sadly destructive and not good for either of us, just very toxic. And it, like I said, it just resonated with so many people all around the world. So that was a beautiful book, and I wrote that sometimes even nursing, typing with one hand at the computer as mothers do. Yep.
Yeah. I really love that story because you found something that was a gift to the world and also a gift to yourself. That's
It
beautiful.
really was, Karen. And I read back some, occasionally I'll flip through some of the pages and I listen to what I wrote. And a lot of it is about my almost desperation to be the good mom that I know is inside of me, despite what I was raised with. And that was a really powerful and very healing. I had a lot of compassion for Beth, the younger Beth, as I read those pages and thought, wow, thank goodness. I've had enough people in my life and other examples that I can now, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes beautifully, learn how to apply those to my wonderful child.
So I know you have books in between your first book and then your most recent book that launched last week. Tell us a little bit about those books in the middle. What are some teasers about those? Maybe the best thing to say.
Sure. My first 5 books were on parenting, so similar themes to my first one, also about getting balance in a parent's life. I really focus on balance, which also led me to, I'm an economics nerd. That's why I'm international relations major, and that's why I ended up in Congress in politics, is that I had an epiphany at age 7 where I heard the words, the economic system is man-made and therefore can be changed. And as a mother, I really noticed how the fact that our economic system is based on productive and reproductive work. And guess what? Which one, Karen, is not paid?
Oh, that's hard.
Reproductive work. So almost
Mhm.
everything mothers and women do is not paid. And so I really took a hard look at that, and I followed that thread, and I wrote a book called He's Just No Good for You to really talk about destructive relationships. I think that's when I was starting to really articulate and understand the different levels. Because back then, people didn't talk about narcissism as openly as they talk about it now. They didn't talk about borderline personalities. They didn't talk about pedophiles. These things were really on the down low unless you were in therapeutic settings or you were with a very advanced therapist. They just were not as common as they are now. And I'm so pleased that's something that you continue to bring out in your work because if you don't have, I know for me, I didn't have the words for some of the things I was experiencing. So I wrote He's Just No Good for You so that women would understand some of the things that I learned about guys who were not interested in women's well-being and often very abusive. Yeah.
That title is crazy powerful to me. I imagine that book also did really well as a bestseller. Is that the
It
case?
did well, and interestingly enough, I'm sad that it didn't go forward, but the TV rights were bought, and actually it was going to be a TV series. And then unfortunately at the TV channel, all the executives got fired. They brought in a whole new group, and this new group decided, no, we are not going to do anything empowering for women in that regard, which was very sad. But it would, yes, it
Yeah.
did quite well, and it still sells quite well when people discover it. And then my last one was called The Recovering Feminist. And that was helping to distinguish the difference between empowerment and what a lot of feminists unfortunately have moved toward a philosophy that's much more domination system. And it's much more, if you, patriarchy would be the old word, but it's not just men, it can be women too. And so I really wanted to look at that theme and weave that in together about why that happens. And most often it is because of the huge disparity in economic power and value, just value for the type of work, and not just value for the type of work. I want to be really careful here, Karen, actually. We often frame it as work, but a lot of women I know and the powers that they have are intuitive. They're about nourishing, nurturing, as well as the type of intelligences. And the book I love about women's way of knowing, that type of thing, we've been persecuted. We've been burned at the stake for that type of knowledge and gift and wisdom. And I
True
really,
story.
yeah, true story. This is not
Mm.
made up. And so I wanted to weave that into that book of reminding women where their true powers lie and inviting them not to attach to these systems of domination that are destructive to earth, destructive to women, destructive to men, frankly, destructive to the environment, and so on. And that book was very interesting because it opened doors at Stanford and also at Harvard. I worked with Harvard Divinity School for a while based on some of the premises that I put in that book. And I'll tell you a story just because I love when my mind gets blown because of the world that I hang out in. But suddenly there was a professor there who this was his first introduction to the Harvard Divinity School. He had been spending time at Esalen and he wanted to talk about psychic things, intuition, paranormal experiences, and so on. And I was like, dude, you are speaking my language. And if this is just coming to Harvard now, I'm glad it's coming. But how interesting to see these things opening up in some of the highest academic institutions in the world. So
Right.
that was very fascinating. And to me, they link together quite a bit. And I'm slowly seeing more and more people making these connections with especially with what's happening today in the world.
Can you also give us a teaser on your beautiful new book as well?
Thank you, Karen. I really love this book. It is a labor of love, Escaping Crazytown, a woman's spiritual journey of, this is the proof copy. I'll just hold it up. Spiritual journey or spiritual adventure of courage, comedy, and cosmic love. And this book was so important to me because I didn't want it to be a mommy dearest. Boy, I'm going to choke up. I
It's
love
okay.
my mother and I loved her
Yeah, of
deeply.
course.
And she was so messed up and she was so brilliant. She was so many things and she could be evil. I think she was even evil. She was extreme. And this book, I really want people to know you can go through something so extreme and you can not only survive it, you can find ways to thrive in it. And that's why I did not make it a mommy dearest. I didn't want to spend all my time blaming her for my life because that's not real. And it doesn't talk about disempowering yourself. Give them enough power to completely ruin your life? Absolutely not. And so I really wanted to talk about the many stories. There's one story in the book that I'll share with you. I want people to look for miracles, even when you're in the depths of degradation. I was walking along the beach in Laguna Beach because I went down there because I was so depressed and I couldn't seem to come out of it. And I thought, being in Laguna, one of my favorite places, that'll fix this. And I was walking along the beach. I noticed I was on the main beach and almost no one was there. There were three people way far in the distance. And that was highly unusual for Laguna. And I looked down at my belly and I took my fingers and I grabbed little inch of fat on my belly and said, "You're so ugly." The anger, the resentment, everything was starting to turn in on me. That's what depression is. It's turning in on you. And I was the self-loathing. I could feel myself self-loathing. And I thought, wow, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. And at that moment, I said, I need help. And literally, this gorgeous man in a steep Speedo rose out of the water. I kid you not, like something in the movie. Rose
Wait, this is a movie. You're talking about a movie, right?
Yeah, it was like a movie. His hands in his hair like this. I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And he pointed my direction, and I turned around and looked behind me because he couldn't be pointing at me. And he said, "No, I'm pointing at you." And I couldn't believe it. He walked over and he said, "You need a hug." So he hugged me. Then out of nowhere, a friend materialized. He hugged me. I thanked them both profusely. And I walked a few steps down the breach. I turned around to tell them both thank you once again. They were completely gone, disappeared. So I looked up at the sky and I said, well done. If you're going to send me a guardian angel, that's the type I like. Please do. Can't miss them.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
So I talk about these stories in this
Mm,
book so that it's balanced with the humor in our lives, the miracles, the amazing, outrageous things that happen to us, the people that cross our paths. The father I had and have, who's 90 years old, who has been my rock, and my Canadian family who really taught me what love is, and they balanced out what was happening in the extremes on the other side. So I like this book because it's a nice weaving of many facets of my life, and a lot of people are resonating with it, which is wonderful.
right. Well, I have it. It's on my to be read very soon list.
Thank you, Karen. That's
I'm
very
excited
kind
for
of
this.
you.
Yes, I was hoping to read it before today, but my book stack, because all my podcast guests tend to be authors, so my stack gets quite large.
I believe me, I understand. I
Yeah.
understand.
Also, Beth, if you could share with us as we get closer to wrapping up, is tell us about the clients that you work with now. Tell us a little bit more about the skills that you bring and the compassion that you bring when you work with people now.
Sure. I do something called biomagnetism. That's one facet of what I do. That is magnets on the body that rebalance the pH, and so pathogens they die. And I was healed with Lyme disease by the magnets that and this whole system, a wellness system. And that's why I trained to become a biomagnetism practitioner. But I also, what I bring to that is I literally can have people walk into the room and immediately, as a medical intuitive, I see what's going on with their body. And I often can see trauma and things that are preventing them from getting well. So they may feel desperate that they want to get well and they're seeing all these doctors. But until we hit some of the core issues or even things that may not be in their full awareness, some people can't heal. And so that's part of what I bring to the table. And then I'm able to, with my hands, not only place the magnets, but with my hands and with energy, bring about transformation and connect with the person's higher self. And in so doing, the higher self allows me to bring healing energies, divine energies into the person as well. And that I find I'm lucky. I get one or two miracles a week with people. And then other times it's just chipping away, one layer at a time, one piece at a time. But I do love the work because it really brings the gifts that I feel like Spirit gave me and that I often feel that saved me in my scenario. And I can bring those to others and help them through their journeys, many which, Karen, I'm sure you're not surprised to hear this. Many of the people who come to me for healing, they may say, "Oh, I've got this staph infection, or I've got this autoimmune disorder, or I've got Lyme disease," whatever label they want to put on it. But you know as well as I do, at least 70-75% of those who come, there's trauma involved. Yeah.
I bet the number percentage is probably higher. Yeah.
Oh, I was being nice. Yeah, I think it's much higher. And you put on intergenerational, you put on the complex PTSD. It's a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, just to circle back, that's part of the reason I wrote some of the books that I did. I want people to see the systems and the paradigms that are set up. They are set up to be traumatizing. And we have the power to transform that. And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing today. I see it in your work, I see it in my work. And there's a lot of people who are moving to transform that into something much better.
That is so hopeful and inspiring. So, one of the questions I sometimes ask as an ending, and of course, if there's anything that you didn't get to share and want to, this is the time to do it. But I'm hoping you'll end on answering the question, if someone is listening today and they are in the depth of their trauma, they're feeling beat down, maybe stuck, what words do you have to give them a little bit of hope today?
I think I would say, remember who you are, because you are not what's happening to you. And once you understand that you are not what's happening to you, you did not cause it, you can feel that power in yourself, even if it's a whisper. And I want someone to grow that whisper, Karen, until that whisper becomes a full, animated, lively voice. That's what I would recommend.
It's beautiful and very much on theme for our summit, finding your voice after trauma. I know you weren't even trying to do that. It's just
No, no,
natural. That's
that's
our work, right? So it's
that's our
natural.
word. Yeah.
Yeah. And is there anything that you wanted to say in the podcast today that I didn't ask you about? I want to make sure that you feel complete. I know we could talk for 5 hours, but since we can't.
No, I just want to thank you. I think this for the opportunity to do this. I hope your listeners get some hope, and more than hope, I hope they get traction on their lives. I really do. That is my wish for them. So I also want to end with a wish and the intention of having them get a lot out of this and what they need to hear right now from both of us. I think that's a really important part. And I do want to let people know too that Escaping Crazytown, the audiobook is coming out. Some people have mentioned to me that, yes, just like us, they have stacks and stacks of books. And they said, if you can just make it into an audiobook so I can listen to it at home on the tape recorder while I'm cooking or in the car. So that should be out in about, I think, 3 to 4 weeks. And so I do want to let people know I heard their calls and we're getting that going now.
Beautiful. Thank you, Beth, so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on our show today.
Really a pleasure, Karen. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening in today. Please join us next week, same day and time. Also, I would love for you to check out my website, healthrivedream.com.